Hi, greetings. Now, we all love Vikings and Viking things and history on the channel. And one of the things I've been talking about in the short videos is stupid ways to die as a Viking during the Viking Age. And I've done a few of these videos and I've got quite a few more to publish. But today I'm going to talk about a very stupid way to die in the Viking Age in long format video for you. So it'll be a few minutes long. Is, well, getting into battle with no weapons. Now, as you can see, as I step back, I'm a Viking and I'm well tooled. I have a very good spear and a Dane axe, but I can't use both in battle, of course, because it's very difficult to fight with a spear and a Dane axe. So naturally, I would be going into battle and I would grab my old spear and throw it at the enemy. Ouch. And then I'll have a Dane axe. But to go to battle with no weapons would be foolish. Because let's face it, if you just got your leather jerkin on and a tunic and you got nothing, not even the sacks, you're not going to last long unless you can pick up a weapon. And why would you go into battle with no weapon? Why would you? It would not make sense. Unless you was very poor and you had no weapons. But even still, there's no excuse to go and find some farm tool or even, you know, an old hammer. That does make you think, you know, if you're a blacksmith 1200 years ago, or perhaps you're a blacksmith during the times of William the Conqueror in 1066. Such a fascinating age in history. And there you are, you know, you work in your forge one day and you hear rumours that all the men in the village are going to get together and have to march off. Now, as a tradesman, as a man with skill, and blacksmiths, you know, they were very highly respected. Not only did they know how to make things, they also knew about medicine and wise things and gave advice, you know. Oh yes. You'd think, well, would he go? There's old Eirik the blacksmith. You know, he's in his 30s and all the men from the village are going to form up into the fjord and go and fight the Vikings or the Saxons or the Normans. Down in the Normans. Oh yes, they can have some of that. And you know, you think to yourself, well, would a blacksmith go? And maybe he would. And would. The blacksmith uses hammer as a weapon. Now I often think about this, you know, you may not be able to afford a Dane axe. You know, most people did not have Dane axes. It was a weapon of the wealthy and the higher class. You know, you may have had a good old sax. This is another one I bought last year. It's not bad, I like it. Basic. But Woody took his hammer, you know, his favourite hammer. This one's a very rusty hammer and could do with a clean and a bit of a grind to get rid of the burrs. And I'm sure you agree, you know, interesting way it's been fastened in. It's quite nice and it's got that typical type of Viking shape. It's probably an old brick hammer, to be fair, but I quite like that. It's got a medieval style to it. So would the blacksmith, you know, go off into battle? Well, I think one reason why not to take a hammer into battle, as I just demonstrated at the very beginning of this video when I was jumping around and the hammer fell out. And luckily it did not land on my feet because I'm only wearing Viking turn shoes. As I try to get my leg up, there you go, you just saw it. So it does make you think, you know, would the old blacksmith go to battle with a hammer? I bet some did, you know. Would he even take a hammer and tongs? You know, you could defend yourself with a pair of tongs and a hammer. Personally, I like a shield if we're going to have a hammer. But personally, I would have thought the blacksmith would have an axe in his forge because, you know, you always need to be chopping wood for. And maybe not for the process of forging, but you still got to eat water to drink, make drinks and feed yourself. And you also got to get the forge going, and often they would use bits of kindling. So I'd imagine he'd have an axe. You may also have a spear, because let's face it, in those days a lot of people relied on hunting, and having a spear is a very handy tool and weapon indeed. More of a weapon and a tool. I mean, there's not many things you could do with a spear, tool wide really. It's one of those few weapons which is a weapon. Yeah. So you go back to the old question, you know, would a Viking go into battle with no weapons? I think it would have been a very rare sight. If he was not wearing weapons, it'd be some reason, like he was carrying a banner, or perhaps even a drum. They did use drums to a certain degree. I'm trying to scratch my head then, but I realise I'm wearing a helmet. God blimey. That's another downside about wearing helmets, is that, well, you can't scratch your head. What you have to do is just wiggle your helmet about. We could have talked about that. And then the itch goes. Oh yes. But then you got to adjust your helmet again. After all, you want the nasals to protect your old nose. Yes, and the old Dane axe. You know, how many people would have had them? Like I said, very few. Actually, even when I stamp this on the ground, it rings. But I don't like this shaft. It's just too straight, and it's just a bit too thin. It's an old spear shaft. But of course, the alternative way of carrying a Dane axe would be like this, if you're on the march. But let's face it, you don't want to be carrying your arms in your arms all the time, and the idea of you marching along, of moving to your other shoulder, which they would have done, not in unison, but I think it would have been more chaotic in manner, and they wouldn't have had some kind of a drill sense or understanding that they could all say left shoulder and they all go to left shoulder. But you know, I'd imagine when you walk and you do, it's not a matter of imagining it, you do want to alternate your ways you're holding your arms. My favourite would be this one though, would be port. If you're marching, I'd quite like this. And of course you could also just sling it like that and not have to use your arms. Just being careful of how sharp the point of the Dane axe is. Huh. We also talked about other stupid ways to die in the old Viking times. A couple I can think of right now would be, well, being thrown into a pit of snakes or wolves. Let's say there's old, you know, Thorkel, and Thorkel's being captured by some Anglo-Saxons. And Thorkel, well, he hasn't got a lot of coin, he's not worth much. And, well, they decide he's been a nuisance, he's been harassing and raiding Wessex for some time, and he's gaining a reputation. So they decide to, oh, make a lesson out of him and demonstrate to other people, because it'll get out, you know, people talk and rumours will spread about the land. Oh, Thorkel's been killed by being thrown into a pit of adders, you know, a pit of snakes. And I'm sure you agree. Oh, that's not a nice way to go. There you go. There you are. 1 minute you're standing above a pit and somebody spears you in the back and you fall in, and the next minute you're being bitten by 30 snakes, and luckily you'll probably die in a few minutes, I would hope. But even worse if you're going to be surviving for a day or so, it's in pure agony. And then of course there's the pit of wolves. You know, I'd imagine, you know, there's old Ragnar, of course, and he died by the pit of snakes. But in this case, we're going to imagine Ragnar's being thrown into a pit of wolves. You know, if they're lucky, he's lucky and he's got a sword or an axe, he could defend himself. You know, whether he could take out a pack of wild wolves, it's another thing. But yes, and of course another way to die in a pit is a pit of sharp wooden stakes and just being thrown in. And of course we don't think about booby traps and these sort of things and mechanisms you could defeat your enemy by having pits and having trip wires. No doubt such things would have been practiced and known about. But again, we don't think about that in Anglo-Saxon and Viking warfare. Yeah. And I think one of the early ones where I talked about the tanner falling into his pit and drowning in a pit, and I'll talk about that for a minute before I end this video. So what is a tanner? A tanner is a person that works with leather, and he works with the stage where he's tanning it. He's scraping the fat off, then he's putting it in these pits, and the pits are literally filled with dog poo and all sorts of horrible things you do not want to know about, because you want to dye the leather and treat it, and so you'll have a pit dug into the ground, probably lined with clay, and then there'll be good, you know, there'll be wood above it, and so you could hang the leather from, or hook the leather to, and in each pit would be, you know, probably, you know, I can imagine them being like 2 meters by 3 meters, you know, or something that size and that deep. So as a tanner, you've gone out, you've been working all day, and you decided to go and get some mead down, and you get sloshed, you get drunk, and you come back to work because you forgot something, and you fall into one of the leather tanning pits and you drown. I'd imagine that is not a nice way to go. And on that very thought of that horrible death, I'd imagine it would have happened in the medieval age. You know, it's a bit like the old modern story about the man drowning in a vat of beer, but you know, he tried to drink half of it first, but eventually it got to him. You know, it's the modern equivalent. So leave a comment and share the video, and if you can give it a like too and take your time out, then I would be more than grateful. Oh yes, I'm just going to end the video with me just swinging my axe about a bit, but I can't really do too much figure eight with this axe. It's just too slippy. It needs a leather section at the back.